Hello everyone, Rao here. I just wanted to go over how I one second. I just wanted to go over how I make my respaces because I've gotten a lot of people who ask me about it, and I also found a few things recently that made it really easy to consistently get very cool sounding Reeses. So I'm going to start by making a Reese using one of the most typical methods, and I'll do it in Citrus so that anyone with FL Studio can easily do this, and if you're in Ableton, like, you can use Operator or anything. And basically, right, you take a low-pitch sine wave, so this is C1. No, that's C2. This is C2. And then, right, take another one, and then pitch them slightly away from each other. I'll do this. Sure. I'll do this much so that you can hear it. You can't hear it very well. I'll do this much. So at its core, this is about as simple as a Reese can get. I actually have a Citrus preset that does exactly this. Right, and it's two sine waves, and then a third one that gets RM'd into them slightly, just for textural reasons. But yeah, this is the most simple it can get. Then I have this version, which the thing about this version is it's almost the exact same, but now I have this knob to control the speed. It's this knob. Right, you can see it there. If you distort this a ton, for example, like this, now the science behind this is, if I take an Edison, when you have two sine waves, and there have been loads of tutorials around this, but I'm just going to go all the way back to the beginning and explain the exact science behind it. If you have two sine waves, and you do this, wave, and you do this, when they are of different pitches, they do something called phase cancellation, which is basically because you can only hear one audio file at a time, and there's a reason I'm going over this with just sine waves to begin with, but if you have one audio file at a time, let's say I have a sine wave, right? I'll just take basic sine wave, and I'll render it. Quick render, right? We have this sine wave now. Let's say I clone this. Right, so here's the sine wave. Here's another sine wave on top of it. Now it's just louder. But if I reverse the polarity, reverse polarity, there you go. It's silent. The reason this is because if you put them on top of each other and zoom in a ton, which if you get to the point where you can see individual waves, you'll notice that when one of them is at its peak, the other is at the lowest, is at the, I think it's the crest. And what happens is when you add these together, it becomes a straight line at zero polarity. Once again, one of them, both of them. Without the other one, it's this. Right, so they sound the same, but when put on top of each other, they phase cancel and you hear neither. So that's the science behind what's going on here. The difference here, though, is if I show this view, because it's two different pitch sine waves, they go in and out of phase. And as they go further out of pitch with each other, it becomes this, which is like, it's so quick you can't really tell. But back here, you can see exactly how it works. So that is the science behind a respace. Except there's one more layer when you do it with saw waves, and that is that things phase cancel according to their hertz. So the higher hertz it is, the faster it will go in and out of phase. Or I guess the higher hertz difference. But hertz is exponential in comparison to pitch. which means if you take a saw wave, okay, there we go. That's what I was trying to illustrate earlier with the saw waves. That's what two saw waves sound like. Turn this down. Whatever. Anyway, okay, if I go like this much, you'll notice it went out of phase in the higher octaves first. And it's easier to visualize in a harmor, but I'm doing it in Citrus because everyone, like, at least most people have Citrus. But if I pull up harmor, I can show you exactly. You can actually see it in the spectrum as well. It's kind of weird. But yeah, this is basically the science behind it. Now for the ambush Reese, the thing I did differently is I took the fundamental and I made it perfectly in phase with itself. So that like you would always have this clean fundamental. And then I did this, which added the bubbliness to it because I'm making the phase cancellation happen differently over the frequency spectrum. So this is all the science behind it. How do we actually apply this? Well, especially once you distort it, right? Let's pull up the exact ambusheries. You can kind of see this is a little different, but I have rubber distortion cranked, and then I have unison on it, and that's what's making it sound this way. If I turn off the unison, if I turn it back on. Okay. So now we know how to make a Reese in its simplest form and why it works the way it does. So let's open up, you know what, I'm just going to restart entirely. Let's open up a Citrus, right? Just for the sake of having a Citrus, and then do that, this, this, okay. Let's say I do like a, I don't know. Let's turn up the BPM a little. So now, what I can do, right, you can always just plop this on it. Now it becomes this. But the moment you do this, you get that. So now, I'm actually going to do something real quick. A good way to get a solid fundamental is to just cut it out of one of them. And let's say I add a second one and I go to 8-2 to make it symmetrical so that the pitch doesn't waver. Convert to sine harmonics, get rid of that. Cool. Now you get this sound. And you can just process this to your heart's content. I'll throw like this on it. Let's make the difference higher. 7, 4, 2, 6. Okay. So right, this is the generator. This is the first layer. The kind of thing you can do with the first layer. And then where you go from here, right, is you like just apply any sort of effect to it. What is up with the panning on this? What is up with the panning? Is it already like right panned here? No, it's not. What is making this pan this way? Whatever. This is a basic Reese. You get what I'm saying. The next phase is, of course, to like put a bunch of post-processing on it. The easiest thing to do to make it sound interesting with post-processing is to just automate a ton of filters really quickly, right? If I just like do this. This is, by the way, it's 2 notches in a bandpass. Even only this much movement will change it like drastically. It'll make it a lot more interesting for the ear. I'll do that with it. Right, so now we have this. And of course, the next step is, because we took out a ton of the spectrum, we bring it back in through distortion and compression mainly. So the easiest way to do that is to do this, which is going to make it sound extremely distorted. That actually worked better than I expected. You can also throw the octagon on it. Let's hear how the octagon sounds. The octagon is surprisingly effective. Okay, it wasn't the best right now, so I'll just distort it, right? Right, it sounds like a Reese, but there's nothing crazy going on. So now, let's go and try to make a more interesting kind of Reese. Now this is the part where it's a lot less scientific and a lot more experimental. The idea. Anyway, so the thing I learned recently with Reeses that can make them sound less like, you know, boring, oh, FL crashed, awesome, the kind of boring stuff you heard there, and more like, well, for example, I can pull up, what's it called? It's called this one, right? Less like the boring Reeses you heard in Ambush and Arrival, which, don't get me wrong, were pretty good for what they were, but you can get yours, like you can get a Reese sound to sound a lot more interesting, is to rely a lot more on the effects to do the interesting stuff. So, for example, here, right, and this is the important part. Now that I've gone over all the like random stuff you can do, this is one of my whips from 2021 that I am probably never going to finish at this rate, but this. Right. So this, these, where's this gross beat, by the way? Where's, oh, there you are. Are you important? Oh, okay. Right, so naturally those don't sound as much like the other basses as you'd kind of expect. So if I take off all the post-processing, 1, 2, I think it's like all of these, and this is not all Reeses, but most of the main ones are. Right, so for example, this one is a huge patch. Let's actually, it's been forever since I looked at this, but this is a great example of what I'm talking about, so. Okay, so we first have our initial Reese layer. Once again, if I take this off, it just sounds like, and like this, right? So this is the initial patch. And then of course I add this to it. Just for some extra phase cancellation, just makes it bubbly. Then I throw distortion on it and a chorus, and this is what that sounds like. Right? More bubbly phase cancellation. Then compression, distortion. And then I have a low-high split where I distort the lows and add chorus to the highs. So here's what the highs sound like. Here's what the lows sound like. And just to, yeah. So then here's what they sound like together. Right. Then you distort them together. And then this guy is just some extra peaking stuff. Okay. Then this whole effects chain. Right. And this is a long effects chain. And there's more after this. So we have the... Right, we just have a bunch of fattening it and sculpting it a little. And then this is where it starts to sound more interesting. This vocodex is just doing a bunch of random stuff, and this adds a ton of very interesting characteristics to it, and makes it sound wetter. And then we have a bunch of other stuff, and then we have this portal, which is just not loading. So, turns out it's not doing anything of importance. And then, yeah. Okay, let's talk about this now. This guy... has more stuff going. Is it this? Yeah, so it's this guy. And this initial patch is simple. It's just more like weird phase cancellation stuff. If I get rid of this patcher and I just solo this harmer, it's this. Which doesn't sound like there's much going on. Then it gets compressed and distorted with the original signal, which is really weird. I don't suggest doing that. And then there's this low pass. And then OTT. This patcher, on the other hand, adds a ton of stuff to it because it's once again the low-high split where I distort the lows and put a chorus on the highs. It already sounds way different. And then I do the same vocodex thing, and then a bunch of other stuff. Except I think I actually... It might be this. That sounds correct. Okay. Now this guy is very interesting. Right, it doesn't sound like much. This is literally the ambush Reese. There's nothing changed, if I remember correctly. Except maybe more like unison and stuff. What makes it sound so different when I put the effects on is because of this gross beat. Right, and that's why it sounds the way I want it to. I think it's this. Okay, and then we just have, 808, like... And then this. Right, and then you kind of get the idea. Okay. Now, in my song coming out very soon, there's another set of Reeses that come from a bass jam that sounds like this. And the reason that sounds the way it does is actually very simple. And this is the most important thing I've learned about making good Reeses recently. Don't use your generator for phase cancellation. Or more accurately, you can, but use the effects. So the thing I like to do the most is to put the detune up. Maybe about this much, because then you get this sound. And once you distort this, right, you kind of get this sort of sound. Okay. That's all I'm going to do in the bass harmor. Let's do like a... Okay. Now we have this. This is like the simplest sounding Reese ever. And then there's this trick. And I'm not entirely sure the science behind this. But you can do this. And this is such a useful trick for this. Let's throw a second one on it for merry measure, going the opposite direction. Maybe at a different rate. This one needs to go faster. Never mind. Let's put this one further down the effects chain. So let's get rid of it for now. Right now we just have... Okay. Let's asymmetrical distort for the sake of asymmetrical distorting it. I always love asymmetrical distortion. Okay, chorus is always helpful for this kind of stuff. Now are you starting to see where I got this from? Right, when I mess with this. So I was manually messing with that while I was making that. Sure, let's just add some more. Okay, now that's pretty good. Let's throw another one of these over that. And we can go this way. Okay. Distort, or I guess this is compression, but it'll just make it sound crunchier. Okay. Now for this, there's something very important. And it is that to make a sound more interesting while keeping it gritty, like, for example, let's say throw Vocodex on it. And let's say I really like how that made the mid sound, and maybe some of the highs, but because of how, like, messy it's making it sound, the thing that took me forever to understand is to fix that issue, you do a 3-band split where you separate the lows, mids, and highs. And maybe, you know, you can tweak this to your heart's content. And then throw Vocodex on it. Well, put all your, like, weird processing on the mids. Right. Now we have the, like, weird mids that I wanted earlier, but we still have the good sounding lows and highs. And now you can, like, distort and do all this other stuff and have it sound similar. Okay, but this is way too much. Right, so that's the special magic knob that makes that become... Right, and we can go even further. You know, right now I'm showing you all the ways you can add, like, all these weird phasey effects. But you can go even further and start adding filters and stuff again. Right, now we have this really interesting, like, sounding Reese. Let's throw this on it. Let's say you do like this. 1 second. This is a bad example because it doesn't sound good. You kind of get the idea, though. It's a bad example because it doesn't sound good, but like... I'll try this one as well. Okay, we're gonna go back to this one, do like a... Ah! Less of that, and less of that. Right, and the is, I think, this. Ooh, this sounds really cool. And like, you can just do whatever you want with this. Maybe you're really happy with how this sounds, but you know what? Let's go crazier. Let's go crazier. Also, look at that juicy waveform. I just gotta admire that for a second. Anyway, we got this now. Let's hear how, like, this one sounds. That sounds pretty cool. I got a bunch of weird stuff on here. Right. We can go even further. Perfect. Image. Drag this in. Now we got this. If we feed this through the same effects chain, I wonder how it's going to sound. It's really high heavy, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Let me do this. Oh no, that's the automation clip, not the hardware patch. How's this? You get a lot of highs, and I can kind of fix that in the harmor just by doing this. But you can't fix all of it, of course. So let's see what's going on here. Why is it? Oh, it's the phasers. Ooh! That's nice. That's good stuff. How does this sound with the original as well? Okay, it doesn't sound as good, but this, that's nice. If only the high end was less painful. Less of that. Let's like EQ out the bad highs. And of course the bad lows. That's cool. I'm keeping that. That sounds crazy. You can do so much with this. Another thing I want to go over that I haven't gone over yet is that you can insert 9. You can always use the phaser as well. Sometimes it's really good texturally, just to do like... But the way I like to use it the most is phaser shape, this. And then you get stuff like this. Right, you get the idea behind that. Hello, Future Mrao here. I'm almost done editing this, and I realized that I didn't explain a few things too well, so I just want to go over it real quick. The first thing I wanted to explain was if I take just like a basic saw wave, right, harmer, I just wanted to go over and show you what each effect individually that I often put on my Reeses does, and how to use them. So let's start with, you know, basic saw wave. And let's throw... Might be a good idea to put you in your own thing. Okay, so I want to explain this a little bit better. The way this frequency shifter trick works, right, is when you mix it in halfway, it creates this phaser effect. There's an AU5 video on this and a seamless video on this. Actually, no, I think there's a seamless video on this, but not an AU5 video on this. And I don't understand the science behind it. I assume that because it's frequency, it's phase cancellation based on frequency, that the ones at top get out of phase first for some reason, probably due to the way the frequency shifter shifts the frequency, and then every third of a second, or 1 over 3.12 seconds, every 3. The rate is 3.12 times per second. It then goes and does a full rotation. And then that changes based on the hertz. And this goes backwards, right? But I'm not entirely sure the science. Anyway, that's the frequency shifter trick. With choruses, you can do 2 things. And I'm going to use serum effects for this, actually. There's 2 kinds of things you can do with a chorus. If you take, well, the chorus, right? You can apply it as a chorus, right, to do chorus things. Or you can do what's called a static chorus, where it doesn't change phase, and so it becomes similar to a set of comb filters. And you can do that. A flanger is actually a type of filter, or you can visualize it best in that kind of filter. And if I remember correctly, a flanger plays another copy of the sound later, so it phase cancels, and then it changes the delay, and that's how you get like a... Right, but that's the effect a flanger has, and then a phaser is this kind of effect. Right, I'm sure you can tell that's what they all do. However, there are a few other kinds of effects that specifically multi-band delay and reverbs. Oh, awesome, FL crashed. The multi-band delay and reverbs are the last two post-process things that I want to go over. And then I have another thing I want to talk about because I didn't do it in the video. So right, once again, cool. You know, just your basic saw wave. Let's grab a multi-band delay and let's do something like this. The phases are now completely different. And I have all sorts of times where I use this in a Reese processing chain. And I'm not going to go and make one right now just to show this, but you can understand how this would be useful. However, it has another use. And this is only scratching the surface, right? You can create those kinds of textures by doing practically nothing in this. But if you do stuff like this, that's just a preset that I made one time, right? And multi-band delay for Reeses is actually a great trick. The last thing is a 2-band split patcher, so that you can have your highs have reverb and keep the lows intact. Right, so we've... Cool. Now we do this. If you put this near the beginning of an effects chain, it adds a lot of space to your sound. And you can do that with hyperdimension as well. And the reason I did a 2-band split is so that it wouldn't mess up the low end. Okay. The last thing is... And I'm going to make it so you can't see FL because my phase plant presets kind of dox myself, but I wanted to show this one. And it's neuro stuff, I believe. Yeah, it's this patch. So this phase plant patch sounds let's just throw like right. It's actually a very simple patch, but what I wanted to show with this patch is that as much as I said to make really interesting Reeses, you rely on everything but your generator to introduce phase cancellation, and I realized that that's not true, and I wanted to make a point about that here, because like this. Right? This sounds pretty Reesey. Let's go down. Right, and what this is it's the double side trick and a tiny bit of noise layered with the double saw trick. And that's fine. Like, this works great. This sounds awesome. And you can do all sorts of this kind of stuff in the generator if you want. And really, at the end of the day, it's just experimenting and finding what works. Right, we turn this back on. Sounds better. We turn this back on. We turn this back on. That also sounds cool. And then, of course, and you could make this in Citrus if you wanted. It would take a lot of extra effort just because of the way Citrus is built, but you don't have to have phase plant to do that, and I wanted to make that clear. Anyway, that's all post editing Mrao wanted to say, and I hope that this little addition makes my points a lot clearer and helps explain a few things.